that we receive from others, whether it's misunderstanding, they misunderstand us, they misjudge us, they lie about us, they spread gossip about us. You know, I don't think there's a greater inroad into suffering in our lives than through the instrument of someone that we are acquainted with, and or the greater level of that, someone that we love and are connected with. And then, because they're so close to inflict the hurt. But again, what we've been rehearsing in our hearts and minds in this few minutes together, God's the one behind it all. God's the one who's writing this. Because otherwise we're going to be angry and bitter and hurt. And they come again from the unexpected sources. People who talk about love and talk about God and talk about grace and kindness, and then they become vicious with us. There are very few people who've made it together with me in this. I'm 65 years old now when we're making this broadcast, and I've been on a hot pursuit of the things of God, for over 50 years, and there's very few people who all along that journey have stuck around on that journey. And some of it was really the most gut-wrenching things that I ever went through. And I've even had bodily harm threatened to me and my family over certain issues of where I've walked with the Lord. And these can be really hard circumstances. But just like every circumstance, God wrote it. And it's not them. It's God. And we can't be angry, because we'd be angry at God. And we can't hold grudges, because we'd be holding them against God. It's the freedom journey, Steve. We get to get free from what we're experiencing at the hand of others. And maybe, and even the hand of ourselves. Wayne Watson talks about this in and out of each other life journey in a song he had. Again, I thought about this. I think about it often. I'll tell you who reminds me of this. Andre Snyder reminds me of this song a lot. It's impactful to him. It's called "The Season in Your Path," and it says, God alone deciphers when people need each other most, who will be the blessed receiver and who will be the gracious host. Content at times to be the wind and at times to be the sail. So there's this interaction that God takes us through in life with others of his creatures that are on this same journey that we're on. Whether they're believing or not, they're on the same journey. We're on the journey of God. And God's writing our stories and he's intertwining them, And we need to look past them and see that God's doing this. God's arranging this. Let me give you quickly some examples from Scripture again. Joseph. When Joseph finally does get back together with his brothers, and he says, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. He actually tells them in the verse before it, don't be afraid. He told them not to be afraid. He had risen to the height of power, Joseph had. And he could have done anything his brothers said he wanted. And the first thing he tells them is, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of me. And then in the very next verse, he repeats it. In fact, I had to write this down. In verse 21 of chapter 50, he says, fear not. And then he comforted them. Wait a minute. Is this like backwards? Shouldn't they be comforting Joseph for all the stuff they did to him? He comforted them and spoke kindly unto them. Oh, would you have loved to have been a fly on the wall there? And here's these brothers, and they lived with this. All their life, they lived with what they had done. And then they, in unexpected circumstances, meet him. And he says, don't be afraid. And he comforted them, and he spoke kind words to them. Wow. This is what the sovereignty of God, this is what the love of God, this is what the wisdom of God, in knowing that God, even though it was in their heart for evil, God meant it for good. It changes the way we respond to people. Yeah. I've often told my wife, there is not one person who brought great pain to my life who show up out here at my door that I would not put my arms around them and tell them that I love them and that it's all good. Everything's good, and speak kindly to them, and it's not like an act, it's like, okay, I know I'm supposed to do this. It's like this truth changes us, and we're in the same position, we're receiving and giving this glorious stuff, and then there's Judas. Jesus knows what he's about to do. And yet he has supper with him, the Last Supper, and they sup together, the meal together. And then he says to him, hey, what you need to do, get busy. Go do what you got to do. It changes everything, Jesus on the cross. He should be, okay, we're going to use modern Western American vernacular. Jesus should have been pissed off on the cross for this mockery of a trial and all that went down. And what does he say? Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. But who knew? They didn't know what they were doing, but who did know what they were doing? God knew, because he wrote it, right? For the greatest success of human history was Calvary. And God wrote it. And Jesus had just such a great, great spirit about it. Jesus, when he talked to Pilate says, I don't think you know who you're talking to. I got the power to let you go or crucify you. Oh yeah, I do. He didn't say it in all these words. Jesus said, yeah, I do know who you are, but I know that you have no power except it be given to you from above. Jesus looked beyond Pilate. He looked beyond the Roman soldiers. He looked beyond. He could look beyond, Agrippa and Felix and Caesar. He looked beyond all that, and he just saw God behind it all. So, as painful as earthly relationships can be, if we know God did it, the all-wise, all-loving God who loves us more than anybody else. Okay, here we go.